Alright, so hello. I am Austin Zulger, and I'm doing my mini lecture on high context cultures versus low context cultures. So a context culture, such as China, Spain, or Mexico, is a society that has been around for a while, and they have a set way of doing things, and it works for them, and that's how they like to do it. And since it works for them, and that's how they like to do it. They feel that like they don't always need to adapt and be adapting at such a high rate of speed. Whereas a low context culture is constantly adapting, constantly changing its environment to fit its needs and to fit its wants mainly. Um, so a high context culture is a polychronic kind of culture. So poly means multiple and chronic means time. So that by this it means they are doing multiple things at one time. So they aren't set in tunnel vision, just focusing on one idea, one concept. They are doing several things at one time. And as a high context culture, they often work as a group to get something done. So this means that they, instead of living by themselves, they might live with their families because it's cheaper. So they might have a larger family in one household, living together, working together, getting chores done because it makes more sense to them and it is cheaper. And a high context culture is a culture that is more masculine. So this means that it is not focusing on equality as much, and it is just making and it means that men make the decisions around the house or and the politics. And they do this because this is just a traditional idea for them, and they've been doing it for hundreds, if not thousands, of years for some of these countries, and that's just how they like it. And a high context culture prefers nonverbal communication. So this means that instead of explaining word by word everything that they want done, they're going to give you a few words and kind of point to it or give you an idea of what you have to do it, and you're going to have to figure out the rest for yourself. All right, so now we're going to move on to low context cultures. A low context culture would be a country such as the United States of America or Canada or Australia or really any country in the Western world, I guess you could say. So a low context culture is a culture that is constantly adapting. And so this means that they are adapting to the wants of society. So, for example, a low context culture is typically a feminist culture. And so this means that they're constantly adapting to the wants of their citizens. And the want is to have equality for women and men, have equality for every race and every skin color, and they just want to be able to have the equal decisions and equal risks. They want everything to be the same. And so that is one way that how a low context culture is constantly adapting. And so the low context culture constantly is wanting the success of an individual rather than a group of people. So, for example, we can take the idea of the one percenter area in our culture where 1% owns the majority of the wealth in the US, whereas the middle class and the lower class are not doing nearly as well off as the upper class. But, however, when I do say this, compared to a high context culture, a low context culture does have more middle class people. The middle class is much larger and the lower class is much smaller compared to a high context culture. And in a low context culture, it is more the idea of the society is more service oriented. So this means that the customers are always right, as it is thought to be in a lot of countries or in a lot of companies in our society. And so we have the option of returning something if we don't like it, if it does not fit, if if it breaks. For example, we have the option of returning it. And we also have many guarantees and where we can get our money back if we are not happy with something. And that is a luxury that high context cultures do not always have. A high context culture, it's known as buyer beware. And if you buy something and it doesn't work, you break it's not what you want. That's too bad for you. That's your problem. That's not anybody else's problem. And as a low context culture, we prefer verbal communication. So this means that we like to be very structured, and we like to be told what to do and not exactly how to do it. And so we don't like as much flexibility, but we just like to have it structure. All right, that's all. That's it for my presentation. Thank you for listening.